The village of Ravenglen sat at the edge of a forest that locals avoided after sunset. At its heart, hidden behind towering oaks and thick brambles, stood the Blackthorn Manor, an abandoned house with a history too chilling for even the bravest to discuss in detail. Its windows were like empty eyes staring into the abyss, and its rotting wood groaned with secrets no one dared uncover. For decades, it was left untouched, a monument to whatever malevolence thrived within, until Clara arrived. Clara, a city dweller weary of urban chaos, was drawn to the quiet of Ravenglen. The townsfolk greeted her kindly, but fell silent when she mentioned her intention to restore Blackthorn Manor. They exchanged uneasy glances, their whispers growing hushed. "Leave it as it is," one old man muttered, his knobby hands trembling as he gripped his cane. But Clara, skeptical of ghost stories and desperate for a fresh start, ignored the warnings. The first day in Blackthorn Manor was uneventful, though unsettling. The air inside felt heavy, almost oppressive, and the constant creaks and groans of the house seemed louder than they should have been. But Clara chalked it up to the house's age and settled in, determined to turn the place into a haven. It started small, a faint tapping sound at night, always just out of rhythm enough to keep her awake. The sound came from the walls, then the ceiling, then the floor beneath her bed. No matter where she searched, there was never any sign of mice or pests, just that maddening, persistent tapping. She dismissed it as old pipes or settling wood, but the tapping evolved. On the fifth night, Clara was awakened by a deep, rhythmic thud, as if something heavy was being dragged across the floor above her. Her heart raced as she tiptoed up the creaking stairs, flashlight in hand. She found nothing but dusty, empty rooms. Yet the sound continued, as if mocking her efforts. Then came the voices. At first, they were whispers she thought she imagined, but they grew louder, insistent, slipping through the cracks of her mind like smoke. "Get out," they hissed, or sometimes, "Stay forever." Their tone shifted between pleading and threatening, and Clara's nerves began to fray. Sleep became a luxury she couldn't afford. One evening, Clara found an old journal buried under a loose floorboard in the study. Its pages were brittle, ink faded, but the entries, written by a woman named Eleanor Blackthorn, sent a chill through her. Eleanor described hearing whispers, seeing fleeting shadows, and feeling an unshakable presence in the house. The entries grew more frantic, ending abruptly with the words, "It wants a keeper." Clara tried to leave the house that night. She grabbed her keys and suitcase, but as she reached the front door, it refused to budge. The locks turned on their own, the handle burning hot to the touch. Her screams echoed in the empty halls, unanswered. That night she dreamed of Eleanor, a pale figure with hollow eyes, standing at the foot of her bed. "It's awake now," Eleanor said, in a voice that was both hers and something else's. "You should never have come." Clara awoke to find scratches on her arms, as if she'd been clawed in her sleep. The mirror in her room had cracked, the shards spelling out words she dared not read aloud. Desperation led her to seek help from the townsfolk, but they refused to come near the manor. One woman, clutching a rosary, whispered, "It doesn't let go." Another handed her a bundle of dried herbs and muttered something about protection. Clara felt the walls of reality closing in around her. That night, the house escalated its torment. The walls pulsed as if alive, and the air buzzed with an unseen force. Clara's reflection in the cracked mirror didn't move with her. Instead, it stared, a crooked smile forming as it tilted its head unnaturally. She fled to the study, clutching Eleanor's journal like a lifeline. Flipping through the pages again, Clara noticed a drawing she'd missed before, a crude sketch of a door, one she recognized as the basement entrance. Beneath the sketch were the words, "The root of it all." With trembling hands, she descended into the basement, flashlight flickering. The air grew colder with each step, the walls damp and covered in a strange pulsing mold. At the center of the room stood an ancient, locked chest. The whispers grew deafening as she approached it. When she opened the chest, a blast of freezing air knocked her back. Inside was a single object, a small, blackened heart, still beating. The whispers turned to screams, and shadows writhed around her like living things. She tried to close the chest, but her hands wouldn't obey. Instead, she stood frozen as the heart began to pulse harder, faster. A figure emerged from the darkness, Eleanor, or what remained of her. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural light, her mouth twisted into a snarl. "You woke it," she said, her voice echoing with the weight of countless souls. "Now you must feed it," Clara screamed as the shadows closed in, pulling her toward the chest. The last thing she saw was the heart, now glowing red, as it seemed to absorb her very essence. When the townsfolk finally mustered the courage to check on Clara months later, they found the manor silent and still. The journal lay open on the floor, a fresh entry scrawled in Clara's handwriting. "It has a keeper.